We are especially grateful at this conference marking our 30th anniversary to spend the next hour and a half in dialogue with the esteemed leader of our church and community in America. A leader and a scholar known here and abroad, whom we are blessed to have as our own Archbishop of America. We also celebrate this year the 50th year of his enthronement as Archbishop of North America. Congratulations. His Eminence has agreed to devote this session to a vision for the future and dialogue with us on a broad number of questions that have been submitted to him in advance by the Board of Trustees. So he will not be surprised with any of these questions. Our intention is not to embarrass, but to become informed. So without delay, I will begin with the questions. The format is that I'll ask the questions and he'll give the answer. And believe me, he will be more important to this process. Given the rate of our interfaith marriages, what more can the church do to bring these couples closer to our faith?
Thank you. And I hope you don't mind the light change. This is a very serious issue, and it has been an issue with us continuously. Let me say that it's not only our issue. If you have an interfaith marriage, you have the Orthodox side and you have the other side. It's an equal problem for the other side as well. Depends on their presuppositions. Now, let me preface my answer with something. There is because it's a good thing to know, something more than just dealing directly with the issue. In St. Paul's letter to Ephesians, there is a sentence used by Paul in a very official and ceremonial manner. Paul says, I'm kneeling down in front of God, which he takes a very, very important position. Kneeling down is a position of meditation and prayer. And here comes a statement, in front of God, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named. Εξού πάσα πατριά εν ουρανής και επί γης ονομάζεται. The family, every family is named by God. It's an institution of divine origin. I mean, that's fundamental. Just a quick reminder, humanity starts with a family, Adam and Eve. In the family happens the first crime. Cain kills Abel, the negative aspect of this divine origin institution. We have, and we mentioned in the ceremony of wedding, the famous families, Abraham and Sarah, Jacob, Isaac and Rebecca, Jacob and Rachel. It's a family, the fathers and the families. But even more important is that when God becomes human being, he is not going to the desert like John the Baptist. He is born in a family. And have you ever considered the amazing fact that Christ spent 30 years as part of a family in Nazareth and only 3 years for his public ministry? And something that was mentioned yesterday, that on the cross, one of the 7 words of Christ on the cross is turning to his mother who was there, and John, and says, Mother, this is your son, and John, this is your mother. It's again a care for a family environment. So then, for us, family is a divine institution, and it has a tremendous importance because it has from the beginning of creation of human race, anthropologically, and in terms of Christ, is really established by Christ in a way that is impossible to change. So here we have the interfaith marriages. Interfaith marriages, first of all, I have to warn you about inaccuracy of pretended statistics. Pretended statistics. You get from 40% to 80%, 85%. We have the certain statistics that deal with the mixed, so-called mixed or interfaith marriages performed in a church. Because we have the licenses and the registration, and we know that. The number is around 50%. But there are interfaith marriages that are outside of the church, and we don't know it. We have to add them, but we don't have specific data. You are in a parish. What do we do in the parish? And what we should do? To have a committee, we decided that in our Congress, Clergy Lady Congress in Washington, D.C., 2008. A committee in every parish to deal with the interfaith marriages. First, find through the registry of the church the marriages that have been performed in the church, in the parish, and see where are these people. Are they active members or not? Are they still residents of the parish or not? So, effort number one, very specific and very practical. Find and make sure what happened to the interfaith marriages performed in a specific parish. Number two, you get information that a certain couple moved. We live in a country which is high in mobility. Can we find out where they went? There might be a record or something. You tell me. That sounds like a detective work. Well, let detective work be not only an issue for bestsellers, but for an issue like that. We need this kind of checking, finding out. It's a very serious kind of thing that can be done. Then, in general, see if we have any other means to find these couples. Well, we find them. And we have a given situation. Dealing with mixed or interfaith marriages is not something that could be done with general encyclicals. In other words, we issue an encyclical for who? It's the parish that will do the job. Let's be clear about that. This is the environment in which the interfaith family will act. So, what can we do? Have organized something to bring these couples that are involved and bring also the couples that are not involved. Some special receptions, some occasions which might not have full liturgy yet, but an opportunity to pray, and some meeting together. Just sometimes, if possible, it has been done, I'm not talking theoretically, create some sort of bringing interfaith families together so that they would exchange their experience. It's a very creative work. It happened, it has been very positive, but not generally used. It takes some priests that do that, some communities, some special committees, some active people, etc. There is a further step. This happened with one parish in California. The priest and his wife, they said, let's do something more. So they started the program. They said, during the 5 weeks of the Lent period before Holy Week, on Wednesday evening, we offer a short service and then a meeting, 1.5, even 2 hours, with interfaith couples. A program for 5 consecutive weeks related to the time of Lent. This situation happened because this parish has worked very well with this kind of interfaith marriage and brought every year new interfaith people that were geographically belonging to the parish. At the end of the 5-week period, 50% of the participant non-Orthodox asked for further information, catechesis, and eventually they became Orthodox. That's a fact. It's not fantasy, it's a fact. But it took hard work, it took the love of the pastor, invited the group, he said to them, look, this is not a meeting of process for conversion. This is a meeting in love of the family. We would like for you, since you are a family that has at least one member Orthodox, to just be informed about this kind of thing. So this is more or less what happens. The central issue is to connect and connect in a personal way with the interfaith family. Then you bring them, and this is, by the way, an activity which in parishes that are eager to have a bigger number of parishioners involved, that's an excellent opportunity. Again, I know of a number of parishes, they did that. And you have the parish involved now. Interest is not, the interfaith marriage is not something for just we talk from time to time. It's a going and ongoing interest with specific programs that are very enjoyable. And again, the spirit is not a hidden agenda of conversion. The spirit is information and sharing. Let the people feel free to do something. And this, again, is successful in the cases when the non-Orthodox member is not religiously strong. I know for some interfaith, which is, I know of 2 of them, Orthodox, wife, Jewish man. I know the people, and they said the man is not interested really in his Jewishness. But the wife was wise enough not to press. She did not take advantage of, oh, since you are not interested, let's just become Orthodox. No, I said, let's work, and when the time comes, it will be done. It's a very delicate issue, but the important thing is to find the people of the interfaith connection and marriage and create opportunities for them engaging not only the priest or one of the people, but if possible, the whole community.
Is what do we do with children of mixed faith marriages, and how can we help recruit them to become members of the Orthodox Church? To me, the youth is the area that we're most concerned with also.
Thank you. As you know, in the past, if you have a Roman Catholic member of an interfaith marriage, they would ask to be signed an affirmation that the children will be baptized in the Roman Catholic dogma. In the past, we say. I don't think that is now the practice, right? It's a much more open and free thing. So in that case, I know even from interfaith marriages with Jewish partner, the children are being baptized. That's central. And this is something that we have to deal with, and we say that to our priests. If we deal with this type of issues, make sure that without signing any contract or any affirmation, that the children will be baptized, which is very easy, I repeat, in case when the partner is not an active member of another church. It's important to save the children. That's one thing. Now, here comes a testing point. The testing point is this. especially in a Christian Jewish, which is a small number. The children are Orthodox. They go and take Holy Communion. The father, in this case, in both cases, the father was Jewish, doesn't take any Holy Communion, of course. The mother, because the wedding has not been in the Orthodox Church, is prohibited from participating in the Holy Communion. As long as the children are 1 to 3 years old, that could go 4 or 5 say, Mom, why you don't come to Holy Communion? I say, other moms come with their children. Why don't you come? Mr. Chairman, there is a problem. So what happens? What happens is this. In order to somehow facilitate the thing, and since the mother, in spite of this kind of wedding that was ceremonially consumed outside of the church, is a very strong believer, we said, look, there might be an exception at Christmas time or at Easter time to participate in the Holy Communion, by exception, by economy, as we say, by bending the rule of accuracy and precision with the canons. So that's what we do. And then also we offer the opportunity, we try to offer the opportunity for the children to participate in summer camps, in other things, so that they will be more and more connected.
You know, Your Eminence, we all are Orthodox Christians, and we believe in our faith, and we believe that our church possesses the Holy Spirit. My question is, are we providing the children reasons to want to be Orthodox? Are we out soliciting on campuses where a tremendous amount of children are going to school, and are we providing places where they can go learn about the Orthodox faith? It seems to me that the Protestant church in particular are very well financed, very aggressively recruiting children. And I'm just wondering, are we competing at the same level to get those children into our church?
Thank you. You know, inadvertently we went to another question, the question of youth. Not only, because it's more general, it's not only for the interfaith marriages. Well, now, what we have again is the following. We have a standard, I would say, and over-the-board condition of a declining curve in participating in the church affairs as we go above 18 and up to 35. Up to that point you might have a number of children, you know, Sunday school and other kind of events. But at the time when you are at the very end of high school, university, things go down in terms of numbers of participation and stay down. This is a general phenomenon for all churches, Protestant, Jewish, Catholic, and our church in America, and universal. Even we might be a bit better than we do. What is interesting is a phenomenon observed with some of the evangelical churches that present an increase in membership in general. And there was an article in the New York Times last year, front page, talking about this issue. And they had the following observation, which is very interesting. They said, well, we have this decline, which somehow it happened also with the adult people, but not the same degree. What happened to an evangelical community that has an increase in membership of 300%? The increase of the adult in a year, 300%. of the previous year. You go to the section of ages 18 to 35, it's down. It is down in spite of the 300% up in general membership. So, which says there is a sociological, psychological, financial, existential problem for people who enter universities or similar age, having from their careers, professions, being absorbed of problems of relationships. Have you noticed the smaller and smaller number of people that get married earlier? They have coexistence, cohabitation, not marriages. It's quite a series of problems with these young adults. So there we have to share, unfortunately, a condition that is universal. In this case, we have, and it's a constant pain, we have to say. We try to offer to these young adults possibilities for action, for engagement, for involvement. Whenever we did that, this could have been a work, let's say, in Africa, assisting the missionary work there, which is not go and preach, but go and build medical stations or schools. Visits, there was sometimes there were visits to other places. A good group of our people from here, they went to Constantinople. In 1 year, they fixed a number of churches that need their fixing. In another year, they did something else. There was a cemetery in a miserable condition. Bones outside, dogs around, empty cans of Coca-Cola, things like that. They worked for 50 days. People were here and cleaned up the cemetery. The patriarch went and said, goodness, I never thought that would happen. So, but you need to give this opportunities. Now, what we try to do is to increase opportunities of involvement of these young people, starting with the children. The success in summer camps is an invitation. We have summer camps in all our metropolises and parishes. We have the Ionian village in Greece that presents an increase in spite of the difficulties. But let me just give you briefly the story of one summer camp in New York. The summer camp is in Connecticut, but it's in our area. Started 5 years ago with 60 people, 60 children. Next year, there were 120. Next year, they became 200. Next year, they became 300. Last summer, there were 400. And now, we are in February, and it's almost filled, 400, 500 people going to 600. See, that's the reality. If you do that, but it's a matter of how much can you do that, and we try to do that everywhere. Our metropolitans are engaging in some of the summer camps. So that's one of the activities that happen. And children say, can we have more of that? Can we have more of that? Etc. There are other activities in which we could be involved. Sometimes children are so inventive in doing things. We try to do as much as possible. Question, do we have enough programs similar to something that happens with the Protestant or Catholic churches? I think sometimes we have even more, but sometimes it's the same. It depends on the area of the situation. It's not something uniformly applied. But let me add one very painful item. You have parents who say, well, how about children? Our children, fine. You want your children, the church to take care of the children? Yes. How frequently you come to the service of the church as parent? You bring your child to the Sunday school, Sunday morning, but you don't stay. You go back home. Why you don't stay? then why do you expect that the church will fix this kind of houses? Quite frankly, if you have an active participation of parents, active participation, you guarantee much of the success of the children. If the parents don't do that, say, Dad, why you don't come with me to the church? Mom, just keep in mind and please do as much as you can. In all instances where you have parents involved, you might have tremendous success. I remember, allow me a parenthesis, back in Greece, in the years after the war, and we have the Sunday schools. I mention the story because one of the clergy present here, Father Philemon, is the son of a father who was one of my students in a Sunday school in Athens, in a parish in Athens. You know what happened there? This Sunday school was an upper level for the high class students in the schools. It was after the liturgy. So you have the students who are 150 or 200 sitting. Then it was another section and were the parents. And you have another 200 parents. And you say, what are you doing here? We would like to learn. Why? Only our children will never have this opportunity. Can we involve the parents as much as possible in the worshiping and teaching activities of the church?
Thank you. Your Eminence, can the Orthodox Church address changes in who can receive the sacrament of Eucharist with respect to intermarriage in Christianity?
Thank you. That's a subsection of question number one. A subsection which is important, very important. This is something I have to give an answer that is very clear and painful but clear. Under the present conditions of the existing canons of the Church, the participation in the Holy Eucharist is something that depends first on a full sharing the faith that holds for allowing Holy Communion to a Protestant or a Catholic. And second, that there is no canonical prohibition as in a marriage performed outside of the Church. This is under the present conditions. As I mentioned in another instance, there is a preparation for a pan-Orthodox synod. Among the items in this synod will be participating in the Holy Eucharist, not in terms of a general rule, someone comes and just would like to be in the liturgy, but in terms of the family. That's the crucial point. As I mentioned, we did some exceptions in our case, but there is need for a, how to put it, legislative action on a pan-Orthodox level. This cannot be decided by the archdiocese, not by the Ecumenical Patriarchate, not by the Patriarchate of Moscow, Alexandria. It has to be a pan-Orthodox decision on issues like that. Let me add something, it's not in the questions there, but there is a problem for us. You have a young priest, very successful, with human criteria, because God knows what we are doing. But the human criteria, you have someone who is very successful as a parish person. He has a wonderful family, 3 children. Something happens when Presbytera is driving the car, she is killed. The priest all of a sudden is a widower with 3 children. He is 38 years old. the man did not decide to become a priest as a celibate, but as a married person. He cannot have a marriage. If he has a marriage, he has to be laicized, because there is no possibility of marriage after ordination or after the status of being ordained. Why should they marry? But there are the canons that are based in long-term experiences. This is one of the items that will be in the agenda of this Pan-Orthodox Synod, because it's important. You lose very precious priestly stuff because of this kind of technicality. So you see, I'm even extending the question to include something that is very critical for us. And so we have this number of issues. That's why I ask you to pray for the preparation and the possibility to have this kind of unorthodox synod, even though not with a full agenda and full participation, but in a synthesis that will be able to decide on this kind of issues, which then will be applicable to the whole of the church. Okay, so this is the case. In fact, let me share with you something. Metropolitan Jan was here, Bishop, and you must know. I have been discussing with the Ecumenical Patriarch. I said, we have this problem, we have this issue. I mentioned the presbytery being killed. The presbytery might decide to abandon the family and the husband and have a divorce. As I said, again, it's the same problem for the priest. So we discussed with the Patriarch, a number of archbishops, say, can we do something? The Patriarch is very sensitive on this issue. Very sensitive. He said, well, let me try something. So he tried to have a dialogue with the heads of the autocephalous churches about the possibility for proceeding with this kind of issues. He received some positive answers, but there were a number of heads of autocephalous churches that say, no, we cannot proceed with that. They said, if we convene in a Pan-Orthodox, it would be different. But before that, no. I returned, I must tell you, to the same subject. I said, Your Holiness, I don't know what they say, no or what, but we have the problem. The problem continues to exist. People are alive, people are divorced, people are dying. What happened? He said, I know, but we cannot really. In fact, he tried once again with the people who say no, and it was difficult. So it's something we have to pray and we have to work to have the proper instrument for deciding and resolving these issues. But we're working on that.
Thank you, sir. What is the best way to understand the relationship between Orthodoxy and Hellenism?
Well, Orthodoxy and Hellenism, two big entities, historically, culturally, religiously, anthropologically. It's a very, very big subject, and thank you for the question. By the way, the questions are very vital and very critical.
As long as I keep it in order.
Well, no, regardless of that. I didn't want the legacy at the beginning. Because I'm going to surprise you with that. Now, Hellenism, the relationship. First of all, Hellenism is a very, very general concept. I mentioned something. When people make references, I ask, what Hellenism do you mean? And especially if you involve culture. You mean the Hellenism of 4000 before Christ? Or 3000 before Christ? The Aegean, the Mycenaean, the Minoan cultures? I have seen from Bishop Chamis, and I know that in NAPLES they have to deal with these kind of issues. As it happens with the Onassis, because they have repetitive occasions for exhibitions. Are you mean any of them? Do you mean the pre-Homeric conditions of the time when we pass from the history of stone as main weapons to the history of metallic weapons? Do you mean the Homeric period, 800 before Christ? Do you mean the classic Greek, 5th, 4th century, when you have Plato, Aristotle, and their authors of the theatrical plays, Sophocles, Euripides, Aeschylus, Aristophanes? You mean the Hellenistic period, after Alexander the Great, when Greek language became the predominant language around Mediterranean and even the Middle East? You mean the Byzantine? You mean the post-Byzantine? There are Hellenisms in every period of that. And this is one of the genius of Hellenism. The genius is producing continuously cultures, one after the other. It's a sea with a constant waving. New waves, new situations. A tremendous richness. A richness linguistically. The language. Language, I mean the language, the vocabulary of the Greek language starting back in 4000 down to today is amazing. I said to Mr. Zamis the other day, just judgingly, but it was a serious kind of observation. If you take one verb in Greek language, the verb lio, to solve, this verb occurs in, I was wrong with the number I gave you, occurs in 400 forms. It's amazing, because you have 6 persons in the Greek verb, lio, lis, li, lio, and liete, lio. 6 in the definitive, 6 in the imperative, 6, and then you multiply the times, present, future, past perfect, past future. Then you go to, from an adjective to middle voice, it's 400 forms of one verb. That's the language. So here is Hellenism as language, Mr. Chairman. The church, when the Lord came on earth, and we have the inception of the new period, had as a tool in terms of language, because that was the prevailing language, the Hellenistic Greek. This is a Greek that is very beautiful. It's the Greek of the Gospels, by the way, the New Testament, and of the Old Testament tradition in Greek, the Septuagint. And this is the language of the first written Christian texts, which were the letters of St. Ignatius of Antioch, beautiful 7 letters, just beautiful. The letter of Barnabas, the letter of Clement of Rome, the so-called Apostolic Fathers, the first apologists of the 2nd century, Justin, Athenagoras, Aristides. Then as you go up in terms of time and you reach Clement Alexandrinus, end of 2nd century, you see the language now developing from the Hellenistic into something more sophisticated. You go to the 3rd century with Origen, a further step. 4th century, St. Basil, St. Gregory the Theologian, St. Gregory of Nyssa, St. John Chrysostom. The language here takes off. It's a joy to read this text, but it's not any longer the simple Hellenistic. It's a sophisticated language, not the classic, not the language of Plato. It's a new kind of advanced language, which has the addition of theological terminology, which was not in Plato or Aristotle. There you have philosophical language. In the Fathers of the Church, you have the theological component. So here you have the mixture of Hellenism and Orthodoxy as language, because you have now in the Fathers, they take this kind of vehicle, which is the existing language, and they enrich it to an amazing degree. Allow me to mention an example, if I'm not tiring you. If I'm tiring you, you tell me to stop. But if you put me here, you have to suffer. We are in a conference in Rome, organized every second year with New Testament scholars from Orthodox, Protestant, and Catholic, an offering of the monks that take care of St. Paul's Cathedral in Rome, where the tomb of St. Paul is. It's exclusive New Testament. It's just one pericope. Imagine what we did yesterday. Imagine this for one full week. 30 people just from 8 o'clock till 8 o'clock in the evening working on that kind of thing. The presiding person is someone, one of the best New Testament scholars, a Roman Catholic, who also was the head of one of the universities of Rome that has the best biblical library in the world, the terrific kind of millions of volumes. We're discussing a pericope from 2 Corinthians, and we are stuck with one word. It so happened that I had to have an introduction to this kind of thing. I was one of the people who offered analysis. And I have gone through the texts of St. John Chrysostom, Cyril of Alexandria, Theodoret, Zegavinos. So here comes the discussion. And they say, well, this word has the following 3 possible meanings from what we know from the Greek literature. So I'm listening. A, B, C. I know from my work that there is a 4th meaning. I say, are you sure that there are all the possible meanings? Absolutely, says the chairman, this good fellow. Well, I said, how do you justify your statement? He said, oh, well, I don't know how to go to a long discussion. Liddell Scott. Liddell Scott is a big dictionary published by Oxford University Press and has all possible words of classical Greek. So I said, in Liddell Scott, you have these 3 meanings. He said, yes. May I suggest that there is a 4th meaning, I said, of the word? He said, impossible. I said, you are a very good philologist with good Greek. Could you read this pericope from St. John Chrysostom? So I can read the text. He's a very honest man. There is a 4th meaning. There is a 4th meaning, yes. Thanks to Chrysostom. He said, I never thought that going to the patristic literature, you might have an enhancement in terms of meanings of words used in a different way in the classical Greek. Here is Orthodoxy and Hellenism in linguistic terms. What are the main things that are throughout the Hellenic tradition? A tremendous attention to philosophy. We have these ancient Greeks, they were able to sometimes come up with a startling simple thing. They said the whole philosophy hangs on one question. Tito all, what is the being? Define what is being. And you are lost. But they were able to do this kind of thing. So, developing a philosophy that was just above any description, if you think of the parallel literature that existed at that time, you will see the difference. Number two, you have a tremendous adherence to the concept of beauty. Just go to the museums and look at the sculptures produced in the classical Greek and then in the Roman period, and you would see the difference in terms of superlative beauty. Architecture, why we have Parthenon and other things like that. So you have the concept of philosophy. You have the worship of science in Hellenism. Way before anything was developed, mathematics, geometry, it took 18 centuries in geometry to go from the Euclidean understanding of geometry to the Lobachevsky and to the Riemann. That happened in the 19th century. Up to that point it was just Euclides, Euclid. And if you would like to have an example, Euclides says that if you have a line, you can draw only one parallel. You may draw plenty of parallels, but that's the case. Lobachevsky says there is no way to draw any parallel to any line, and he builds the whole system on that basis. And Riemann says something else. You could go ad infinitum with parallels which are no parallels. But this kind of Euclidean system, and it was Einstein who came and said, well, you know what? This Riemann and Lobachevsky might be useful if you go to the space science. For earthly things, Euclid is the A and the C. Okay. So you have science, you have philosophy, you have beauty. But we have music because in the theatrical place there is a choir that sings. Well, we don't have the music. We know of some keys, musical keys, and scales like Lydian, Mixolydian, etc. But we don't know more. And we don't have much in terms of paintings. Again, for reasons of time was ruthless with paintings. What do we have in the church? Have you ever thought about the millions of icons produced? 3 years ago, Metropolitan Museum of New York bought an icon of Panagia that big, let's say 1.5, 2 feet by 1.5. Painted in the 12th century and exhibiting traces of moving from the Byzantine to the Western classical style. The museum paid $44 million to buy the icon. And these people are very conscious about money. They don't throw the money for nothing. And there are, I can assure you, I saw the icon, we were talking there with the people. I say, they say, what do you think? I said, it's a beautiful icon. I don't want to tell you about some other icons, you have to pay $500 million. Wow, they say, yes, of course, because they are superior to that. It's an amazing production. How about music? Byzantine music, the hymnology. It's art. Do you want to go to architecture? We talk about the idea of beauty. So here is Hellenism and the church in a continuity of philosophy mixing with theology. Science is a different story, but I can tell you, in Constantinople we have the first universities before we have universities in the West. The name of this university in Constantinople was called Pandidactyrion, the place in which you teach everything. Pandidactyrion. That's science. You have art. Even if you go to the vessels used in the church, even the amphia used in the church and in the Byzantine court later on, they promoted the whole science of textiles, the whole business of textiles. If there is no field in which this Hellenic tradition did not enter and did not change and be enhanced, and so we have this beautiful connection. I didn't mention at all something which is permanently cited to me every time we meet with high American officials. Something that I would say all the presidents I have met with, Clinton, Bush, the two terms, Obama, they, when we have the celebration at the White House on the 25th of March, all of them, they said, you know what, you, through the Hellenic tradition, you gave to the world universal values. Democracy, justice for all, respect for human existence and being. This is what you offer to us, and there is no way to express our thankfulness. This item is part now mixed in the teaching of the Church for love, concern, care for the people, and standing for what is just and noble and truth and proper. So that here, I think I gave a very superficial and shallow kind of things. How language, philosophy, art, and then social, political concerns have been intermixed and produce something. That's why we insist on offering orthodoxy and Hellenism.
Thank you. What are the prospects for unity of all Orthodox churches and for Christian unity?
All Orthodox churches here in America. As you know, the system that exists in Orthodoxy is the system of the autocephalous churches. The autocephalous churches are first the ancient patriarchates. Originally, in the undivided church was Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. After the schism in 1054, we have the four ancient patriarchates: Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. Later on, in terms after the schism, way after, in the 15th century, we have the addition of the Patriarchate of Moscow, Patriarchate of Romania, Serbia, Bulgaria, and there was one more addition in the 20th century, the Patriarchate of Georgia, the Georgia of Russia. So you have 4 ancient and 5 later patriarchates constituting 9 autocephalous churches. Autocephalous meaning having full independence, which means the Patriarch of Moscow cannot interfere in any way with whatever happens in the life of Constantinople or Alexandria, etc. But any of the patriarchates cannot do anything in which would be a violation of the faith, the canons, and the tradition of the church without the consensus of the rest. So we have the 9, but in addition, we have some more autocephalous churches: the Church of Greece, having an archbishop as head; the Church of Cyprus, having an archbishop as head; the Church of Albania, having an archbishop. The Church of Cyprus is the most ancient autocephalous church. It's 4th century. Athens, Greece, is 19th century. Then you have Albania, 1937, as autocephalous. Poland, approximately the same time. And after Second War, Czechoslovakia becoming now Czech and Slovak republics. So you have a total of 14 autocephalous churches. They are autonomous, independent in their administrative functions. They meet occasionally. There is a meeting prepared now for Sunday of Orthodoxy, beginning of March, in Constantinople, but to discuss and decide common items, but that's it. We don't have something like a centralization, like with the Pope. Okay. So this is the way they operate, and it has been for centuries that way, with no problems. Any clergy for any of the churches could go to the others, celebrate the liturgy. It's a beautiful reality. In America, we have the presence in terms of jurisdictions of almost all of them. Almost, not all of them, but most of them. So we have a Russian presence, Bulgarian, Serbian, Romanian, Albanian, Carpatho-Russian, Ukrainian, and Antiochian, meaning Syria, Lebanon, and then by extension, Palestinian and Jordan. We have been working together here. We have separate administrative structures, but we have been meeting in an organization called SCOBA, created at the time of Archbishop Demetrios and the other heads of these jurisdictions in the 70s. And SCOBA meaning Standing Conference of Orthodox Canonical Bishops. The SCOBA was succeeded by now the so-called Assembly of Canonical Orthodox Bishops, created by the heads of the autocephalous churches in order to resolve issues of differentiation and not for unity in areas like America, Australia, Asia, and Europe. And we have been working. We have 4 meetings as assembly in here, first in New York and the 3 in Chicago, and we are preparing next September to meet in Dallas, Texas. And we have under this assembly 13 committees working. The most important committee is a committee which was especially emphasized by the heads of the autocephalous churches, which is a committee preparing a proposal for a possible unification of all Orthodox forces in a given country. It's a gigantic kind of work. In the meantime, under SCOBA and now under the Assembly, by a common work, which however was started by Archbishop Demetrios, that was a genius kind of solution, but at some point Archbishop Demetrios, of blessed memory, thought, let's make it not a Greek Orthodox business, and so we have the IOCC, International Orthodox Christian Charities, a terrific organization. I mentioned in the meeting of the Executive Committee, but among other things that this IOCC has been doing for years now. At this moment, they are working in the area of Palestine and Syria, and IOCC is the only organization that has access to Syria. The Syrian government doesn't allow other kind of things because they are afraid of having, together with some material, some other things, okay? And the assistance goes through the Patriarchate of Antioch there. Do you want to hear a number? This IOCC of ours gave, in a short period, assistance, medical and otherwise, in the value of $20 million. And there are people working from here, there. So this is an expression of unity. The other expression of unity is what we heard yesterday from Mrs. Nikos and Father Martin RITZ, the OCMC, Orthodox Christian Mission Center. This is again a common work. These organizations have trustees that are comprised of members from all jurisdictions. It's a brilliant example of unorthodox cooperation. But we don't talk, or of course we have an easy way to celebrate liturgy among ourselves, but we don't have an administrative unity. This is a desideratum, this is something that is the desirable target in which the committee, the assembly is working. Things went in a normal kind of pace until recently, when we have a change. What is a change? There is an increasing, there was in the last few years, an increasing number of immigrants from Eastern Europe, mostly Orthodox. Russia, Ukraine, Bulgaria, Serbia. I asked Metropolitan Anthony of the Ukrainian diocese, I said, can you give me a number? Do you have any idea how many are these people? They all knew that they knew it, they were a number of 100,000 or something. He said, are you going to react if I tell you it might be 1 million? I said, 1 million? Yes, he said. We don't know them. They are just walking around, but it's a big number. The same thing with Bulgarians, Serbians. So now the jurisdictions feel that they have a problem of first-generation immigrants. We were in Chicago, your Eminence, and you know the church of Rock there. You were there. It's close to, relatively close to there. Rock is one of the participants. The bishop there, a very dynamic bishop, tells me, you know, up to 2 years ago, I was celebrating the liturgy, 90% English. Now he said, I have to offer the liturgy in Slavonic. I said, why? Because I have these people who came from Russia and elsewhere, and they have no idea about English. And they say, we would like to have the liturgy in our language, but they have no idea about English. That changes the rules of the game. Not so desirable language. Because they have to think, what do we do, what they do with this type of newcomers who are not only linguistically in a political condition of deficiency, but culturally and in many other ways, and need pastoral help of an increased number. And don't forget that most of them were born in country that was religiously, not simply neutral, hostile to Christianity. So they came here with a package, with a burden on their shoulders, culturally and religiously. And you can imagine the effort that is needed to help them. So this somehow caused a thinking. We have to think seriously because we deal with people. The numbers sometimes are exaggerated, and I always say, well, can you cut something? And jokingly I say, well, I would suggest much. Just cut the last zero. But the last zero said, you go from 1 million to 100, that's what I'm suggesting. What is a zero? Anyhow, but you have to do that because sometimes there might be issues of unrelated propaganda or other things. So here we are. Technically, we are working. We have the mandate and the commission by the Orthodox churches. We have been very methodical. And if you look at the papers written and the proposals, etc. It's an amazing kind of thing. And I told them, we have to be patient and we have to work diligently in our best possible way. The results leave it to God. So this is the case with inter-Orthodox administrative, because otherwise, in terms of worship, proclamation of faith, pastoral methods, we are on the same level. With the non-Orthodox, we are in a dialogue, continuous dialogue with the Roman Catholic. This is the most promising. We established in the United States a separate dialogue between Orthodox and Roman Catholic, which did not stop when the international stopped for various reasons. So we have this ongoing dialogue, produced some basic papers on baptism, on ordination, on the papacy, etc. And we continue. With the Anglicans, it was something, the Anglicans and the Episcopalians, it was something, actually, the Anglican and Orthodox dialogue preceded the Roman Catholic, because it started before the Second War, with the famous Lambeth Conference, 1938. But with the developments of the Episcopalians in this country, this kind of same-sex marriages and this kind of thing, and it was something that caused within themselves big problems, and somehow the dialogue became a little bit of difficulty. But yet we continue the dialogue because it's on a theological level. On our part is Metropolitan Theoclea, which is a scholar from, well-known scholar, Orthodox scholar from Oxford, and the other side is the head of the Canterbury head, Archbishop Canterbury. With the other Protestant churches, it's something. Are we progressing? We are progressing in the sense that we are continuously having the dialogue. Are we in a position to post any dates? I think we should be very, very careful. I remember in Constantinople when Pope Benedict visited the Patriarch just a few years back. It was in his second year as a Pope. And it was an exuberant kind of condition. People were talking things. So here we have a press conference in the Hilton main hall, hundreds of journalists, television institutions. And the question is, what is next day? Next day I said, you mean tomorrow or perhaps next week or next month? He said, yeah, more or less. Your question implies that you are ready to see some very strong signs of being united. Exactly, he said. Exactly wrong, I said. Yeah, exactly wrong. This is, I said, look, we have been separated for 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Can you count the generations? 1,000 years. Traditions, cultural, theological language, differentiation in countries. Do you think that just like that, because of Pope came here and had a nice visit, but let's finish this business? So he said, there is not, look, if God wants, will be not tomorrow, will be at this moment. But it's a matter of God willing doing that. As long as we don't have this sign, we have to be patient and work. Work patiently and try to heal the wounds of 1,000 years. And then do something that would not be imposed like an iron curtain on the people, but something that comes as a natural flourishing of a growing organism. You cannot force a baby to become 40 years old in 1 week, right? You have to wait for 40 years. So that's the case. And this is the point at this point. The main tool and the main instrument used is dialogue. Dialogue is the spontaneous, open, and most effective thing, because it's the only way. If you want to do something, you have to learn what the other person think, not to project your own ideas. You have to listen. It takes time. It takes a good dialogue.
Thank you. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to deviate from the original schedule
Absolutely.
on this question. It's not on the agenda, so if you don't want to answer, you don't have to, but I'm going to ask you anyway. The Roman Catholic Church actively promotes confession as a preparation for Holy Communion. Actively. We also include confession as part of our preparation for Holy Communion. I don't know how active confession is part of the preparation in most cases. For those of us who receive Holy Communion that have not gone to confession, are we getting the full benefits of the sacrament?
These are two separate sacraments. You have something, if you are familiar, the Russians do that in a way that sometimes it becomes a mechanical thing, an artificial. In what sense? You might have the liturgy, and especially if you have two priests or you have the deacon. While the deacon or the other priest recites, "In peace let us pray to the Lord for the Lord," the other priest goes to the door of the holy altar, and here comes the people who ask for a confession, and the priest reads. The notion is that since even at the last moment I can sin in thought or sentiment, how can I approach? So let's go as close to the point of receiving the Holy Communion as possible with a confession. There is a very mechanical understanding here. It's not something like that. I mean, what happens if this is impossible? Then you go and take the Holy Communion, and that's not correct if you have gone to confession 1 week before. So there is a tendency, it's a human element, to be as close as possible to the reception of the Holy Communion with my confession. But practically, it's possible, not only in contemporary life, in antiquity. It was, I mean, when people had to travel a lot to go to the place where the priest was, in places in remote villages, etc. So, there is a prerequisite. What is a prerequisite for the person? And that's important. To be in a condition of repentance in front of God. God, I know that I'm a sinful person. I'm in a condition of repentance. I wish that I had the Father Confessor just seconds before I take the Holy Communion. That's not possible. Then just, Lord, receive my confession of sin and my declaration in a humble way of being, as the publican we have, the tax collector said in the gospel that we have, Lord, I am a sinner, a pity of me. So this is the case. Have the confession, but it's not a matter to have the confession as close as possible so that in the intermittent time you are not being somehow contaminated by a sin. Because sins will happen.
Thank you. So I get the full benefit.
But again, the spirit of repentance, that's the key. Which, by the way, again, repentance, I don't know how you feel some, but the Greek metanoid is have a transformation of mind. A transformation of mind might be not so much of a religious, it's an existential thing. It's a different position towards God. So just think about that. That's the important thing.
One final question, because we have imposed on you all day, you've been very gracious. But if I may ask the first question I asked you in the beginning. During your 15 years as our spiritual leader, you have brought unity and harmony to the church in America. As you reflect back on your ministry, what would you like to see as part of your legacy?
Well, thank you for the good question. First of all, to connect legacy with me personally seems quite an excessive thing. Legacy is for important persons that leave a legacy. I'm not an important person. So I have a difficulty to espouse this concept for me. Leave the legacy for some other. But no, I'm not going to now to play with the words. This has been 15 years of a tremendous experience. I have to say that experience number one was the School of Theology, University of Athens, a wonderful university. After the Second World War, getting out of a 4-year occupation by the Nazi German and fascist Italian and wars on the two Bulgarian armies for 4 years, getting out of that and deciding to have to do something, and deciding deliberately to go to theology and ultimately to the church and offer our lives for that. Having lived the horror of the way human beings have been treated during that war. We saw death every day on the streets. So you go there and you have phase one, University of Athens. Then I am blessed by being part of the monastic, theological monastic community with a missionary orientation, and with the President Archbishop of Armenia, we have been responsible for the student kind of program. By the way, Metropolitan was a classmate, not exactly the same class, he was in the class after me, coming from a very priestly and important family. So we did this kind of thing. And then, after working for this situation with the Christian, student Christian movement, at some point we decided we should do something else. So I came to this country. Originally, you should know, I was finishing a book, and my brother was at that time in Pittsburgh as a professor at the University School of Medicine, and saying, if you need quiet time, I'm here to come and write the book. But doing this kind of thing, I said, no, that's a good thing, but let's have more of things that we need to do with the very serious study of New Testament of Fathers. And then it was this opportunity said, we go to Harvard, to Yale, let's do some place. I said, well, that was not exactly the thing that I had in mind, but let's try and see what. So I checked with programs and other things, and I finally went to Harvard, and I was there for 6 years for a program called New Testament and Christian Origins, a terrific program, in which I never had a problem of Orthodoxy versus Protestant or Catholics, because we had always a reference to the text. I said, gentlemen, this is the text. The text is not Catholic or Orthodox or Protestant, it's just New Testament. Okay? So be serious with what you are doing, anyhow. So that was academic experience number 2. Then I'm here for 15 years. Academic experience number 3. Compared to the previous, no comparison. A far superior education. I never thought that after all these years of studies, you end up with this kind of thing, which is such an enriching experience in bringing you close to God and close to people in an unparalleled way. I mean, there is, sometimes people try to describe, it's not description, you cannot describe how you function in this kind of position, which is humbling. I never thought something more demanding, really. And sometimes exhausting. I mean, it's something that's what it is. But you would never exchange this kind of education with anything else. So now I preface my answer with this long prologue. And this is the case, Mr. Chairman, when you have a long prologue and just one sentence answer. Have you come across a book like that? You say, where is the main part? The main part is simple. The main part is, so forget the language of legacy. It's more than many levels of legacy, but just remember the text of yesterday. That was from the beginning, Lord coming, giving the great commission to his disciples, giving us the privilege of becoming his disciples, engaging in just sharing the gospel in any place, in the immediate family, neighborhood, the country, internationally, but sharing the gospel and having the joy of seeing the people just engaging in a unique adventure. It's a trip that is full of surprises. You think that you have seen a beautiful countryside? No, that's the next one, which is something different. You think that you have seen the best tops of mountains? No, there are even more. You have an impression of some nice lake, and here comes an ocean. It's a continuous, surprising experience. But it's based on this commission, having as center the proclamation of the gospel of Christ, which is for me everything. Anything else is commentary. This is the text.
You're in this, that's wonderful way of answering, but I will say this because you're pretty humble in your own way. Wherever you've been, Harvard, the seminary, any educational facility where you have taught, your class is filled up first. Because you were known as a classical educator and a great one. And we're very privileged to have you. Well, thank you for that.
There is a tradition in the monastic communities of Mount Athos. It's a very touching tradition. At the end of the meal, the cook goes out and stays at the door, humbling, asking for forgiveness for offering not the best of food. I'm not going to do that. Literally, I'm doing that spiritually. I'm asking for forgiveness for bad. Thank you.